Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and today we are tackling a topic that hits pretty close to home for a lot of people.
Hey everyone, I'm the resident expert here, and yeah, I have to say, the source material we're analyzing today is completely paradigm shifting. It really
Mhm.
challenges how we view ourselves.
It really does. So let's just jump right in. Imagine you haven't showered in 3 days. You're just staring blankly at your bedroom wall, and your own brain is screaming at you that you are a total irredeemable failure.
Right. A really dark place to be.
Yeah. But what if I told you that treating yourself as, lazy in this exact moment isn't just factually wrong, but it's actually actively making you sicker?
It's a terrifying paradox,
No.
honestly, because we are so deeply conditioned, almost from childhood,
Yeah.
to view a lack of output as a fundamental moral failing.
Like, if you aren't producing, you're failing.
Exactly. You aren't producing, therefore you are bad.
And usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision, right? It feels like engineering. You break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged white line, the doctor points to it, and boom, there it is.
Broken or not broken, it's clean.
Right. But the moment you step into the landscape of mental health, and specifically into judging our own daily behaviors, that x-ray machine is just completely useless, the landscape gets incredibly murky.
Which is exactly why the stakes for this specific conversation are so incredibly high. Because we're looking at the difference between a temporary psychological state and a severe medical pathology. Confusing the two causes profound harm.
And that is the entire mission of today's deep dive. We're taking all the material we've gathered to completely demystify this incredibly fine, wildly misunderstood line between temporary, everyday laziness and actual clinical depression.
Because getting this wrong isn't just an oops moment.
No, not at all. We want to give you, the listener, a clear, expert lens to understand what is actually happening in your mind and body. We really have to dismantle that toxic trap of self-criticism.
Yeah, and to do that, we need to completely redefine how we think about control. I mean, the most fundamental difference between these two states lies in the power of choice.
Okay, break that down for us.
So clinically speaking, laziness is an active state. It's a temporary lack of motivation that is almost always tied to very specific, identifiable triggers.
Like staring at a massive, complicated spreadsheet that makes your eyes cross.
Yes, exactly. Or just feeling completely burnt out after a brutal month at work. Or even existing in a toxic work environment where your effort isn't rewarded anyway.
So there's always a reason.
Right, there is a tangible why behind the lack of action. And because there is a why, it can be fixed through situational changes. You can get some rest, you can find a new source of inspiration, or you can just apply brute force self-discipline and push through it.
You still have your hands on the steering wheel.
Precisely. You're in the driver's seat.
Let me try to visualize this. Laziness feels kind of like a smartphone with a drained battery. It's flashing red, everything is loading super slowly, but you still know how the machine works.
Yeah, the hardware is fine.
Right, you just plug it into the wall, which is like getting some rest, or you force it into low power mode, which is like using discipline to just scrape through the rest of the workday. The apps are totally fine, it just needs management.
That's a great analogy because the underlying operating system is completely intact. Depression, on the other hand, fundamentally corrupts that operating system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no amount of plugging it in the charger is going to make the apps run. You can leave it plugged in for a week, meaning, you can sleep for 7 days straight, but the system itself is structurally compromised.
Which completely removes the individual's agency. Like the idea of choice just goes right out the window.
Exactly. And wait, I promised myself I wouldn't just agree with everything today, but it really is that stark. The material describes it as being physically and mentally trapped. A person with depression doesn't actively want to lie still and do nothing.
Right, they aren't choosing it.
No, they're essentially a prisoner. And the truly frightening part is that this often strikes without any logical trigger at all.
So no toxic boss or brutal spreadsheet required.
None.
Yeah.
You could have a wonderful job, a stable relationship, money in the bank, a life that looks completely perfect on paper, and this profound feeling of emptiness can still wash over you entirely unprompted.
Which, completely blows up the entire just stay positive advice industry. If someone's operating system is crashing, handing them a motivational poster is basically an insult.
It actively causes harm Standard cheerleading just highlights this massive disconnect between how they know they should feel and the void they actually feel.
Yeah.
You cannot pep talk a corrupted operating system back to health.
No, you need a software engineer, not a cheerleader.
Right. It requires a different level of intervention entirely.
So, okay, if the operating system is corrupted, it makes total sense why we can't load the work app or the chores app. But what really fascinates me in the material is what happens to the apps we actually want to run.
Ah, you mean joy.
Yes, what happens to joy? Because if depression isn't just a lack of energy for work, it has to bleed into the rest of our lives, right?
Oh, it absolutely does. Let's look at how someone reacts to things they normally love. With everyday laziness, you might aggressively dodge doing the laundry for 5 days straight. You'll make every excuse in the book.
Oh, I've been there.
We all have. But if a friend calls and says, hey, let's go grab your favorite food and see that new movie, you are instantly off the couch and out the door. Your capacity for joy, your anticipation of pleasure is completely untouched.
You just didn't want to fold your socks.
Right. And folding socks isn't inherently rewarding. Depression, however, introduces this severe clinical concept known as anhedonia.
Anhedonia.
Yes. It is the total biological inability to feel pleasure. The world literally loses its color. It's not just that you're avoiding annoying work. It's that your most cherished passions, your favorite hobbies, the people you love most, they all become completely meaningless.
That sounds terrifying.
It really is. You look at a slice of that favorite pizza and you feel absolutely nothing. It's just a void.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Because I can hear the listener wondering about a really common scenario. Let's say it's Saturday. You spend your entire weekend glued to the couch, binge-watching reality TV, eating takeout, just completely ignoring the yard work and the messy kitchen.
A classic lazy weekend.
Exactly. Society is loudly going to label you as lazy. Your own inner monologue is probably calling you lazy. But clinically speaking, based on anhedonia, is that actually proof that you aren't depressed? Because technically, you're actively enjoying the junk food and the TV show, right?
This is a scenario psychiatrists navigate every single day. And yes, the capacity to enjoy that unproductive fun is a massive differentiator.
Right, really.
Absolutely. If you are deeply engrossed in that TV show, laughing at the jokes, savoring the flavor of the takeout, feeling a sense of cozy relaxation that points toward laziness, or honestly, just a desperate need to decompress, you're still actively experiencing a reward pathway in your brain. Dopamine is still doing its job.
So feeling guilty about enjoying a weekend binge watch is almost ironic because enjoying it is actually a sign of baseline mental health.
Exactly. It shows the machinery of pleasure is still online. In severe clinical depression, the reality of anhedonia is incredibly bleak.
Because they wouldn't enjoy the TV show.
Right. The weekend binge watcher isn't actually enjoying the show. They are staring at the screen, but the plot just isn't registering. The characters don't elicit any emotional response at all. The takeout food they ordered tastes like cardboard or ash.
Wow, so they aren't choosing fun over a chore.
No, they are defaulting to the path of least physical resistance because every single option, fun or boring, resting or working, feels equally hollow, exhausting, and devoid of joy.
That is a staggering difference. It's like the difference between eating a massive slice of cake because you love cake and want to cheat on your diet versus eating a cake and not even possessing the biological ability to taste the sugar.
That's spot on. The mechanism for experiencing the reward is entirely offline.
But if the capacity for joy completely disappears, what happens to just surviving? Because we aren't just talking about missing a deadline at work or not enjoying a hobby anymore. We're talking about the bare minimum functionality required for human existence.
And that's where psychologists evaluate this through the lens of a functionality floor. The contrast here is where things get truly dangerous.
What do you mean?
Well, with laziness, you might endlessly procrastinate on a major home repair or a giant project for your boss. But you easily maintain your baseline self-care. You take a shower, you brush your teeth, you make a sandwich, you text your friends back. You are still a functioning human being.
The procrastination is just targeted at things that demand a high cognitive load.
Right. Depression, though, lowers that functionality floor straight into the basement. It turns the simplest, most basic automatic tasks into monumental, seemingly insurmountable challenges.
Honestly, it is really hard for someone who hasn't experienced this to wrap their head around it. The material talks about brushing teeth or just taking a shower. How does lifting a toothbrush become physically impossible if there's absolutely nothing wrong with your muscles?
Think of the brain trying to initiate a task in depression like a car trying to start without a starter motor.
Okay, a car without a starter motor.
Yeah, you can turn the key all you want. The willpower is there, the desire to start the car is there, the fuel is in the tank, but the specific biological spark required to translate intention into physical action simply won't catch. Executive dysfunction drops the signal.
So the person is lying in bed, screaming at themselves internally to just move their arm.
But the transmission of that command is broken. It requires a staggering amount of mental energy to override that break-in system, energy that is already totally depleted by the illness.
A car without a starter motor. That makes so much more sense than just assuming someone doesn't want to get up. And when the sluggishness starts blocking normal life, when you literally cannot maintain basic hygiene or feed yourself, that is a massive medical alarm bell.
Yes, that level of severe dysfunction requires immediate medical attention.
Which brings us to what I think is the most dangerous part of this entire deep dive, the guilt loop.
Oh, this is crucial.
Right. Think about the standard hustle culture advice we are fed every single day. Grind harder, push through, no excuses. If you treat the severe executive dysfunction, the literal inability to start the car, as mere laziness, you are applying the exact wrong cure. You're using willpower and self-shaming.
Which is like throwing pure gasoline on a fire.
It creates a terrifying psychological loop. Let's walk through it. You can't function. You can't get out of bed to shower. Because society tells you that lack of output is a sin, you start calling yourself lazy, worthless, a failure.
Yep, the self-blame starts.
And you feel this crushing, heavy guilt. But how does that guilt actually function biologically? Does it just sit there?
No, it actively drains whatever battery you have left. Deep shame and guilt trigger a stress response in the body. You get flooded with cortisol.
Oh, so it's a physical chemical reaction.
Exactly, and that chemical stress further impairs the prefrontal cortex, which is the exact part of the brain you need for executive function and motivation. So the shame doesn't motivate you, it physically degrades your brain's ability to initiate action.
Wow, so it deepens the despair, which makes you even less able to function.
It is a rapid downward spiral.
We really need to contrast the guilt profiles here because I think everyone listening feels guilty about something on a random Tuesday afternoon. How do we know which guilt we are actually dealing with?
Well, with everyday laziness, you feel a mild pang of guilt for skipping the gym. Oh man, I really should have gone. But the defining characteristic of lazy guilt is that it instantly vanishes the moment you finally start doing the task. The action itself cures the guilt.
So you finally open the laptop, you type the first sentence of the email, and poof, the guilt evaporates.
Right, the tension resolves. But the guilt associated with depression is heavy, constant, and tied to profound despair and incredibly low self-esteem. They aren't just feeling guilty for missing a specific chore, they're indicting their entire fundamental state of being.
It's much deeper than an unfinished task.
Much deeper. They feel intense guilt for not being normal, for being a burden to their partner, for wasting their life. And because the starter motor is broken, they can't simply initiate a task to make the guilt go away.
So they are trapped in the bed, physically unable to move, while their own brain verbally abuses them on an endless loop for not moving, and that abuse makes it chemically harder to move.
That is the tragic reality of a depressive episode. Without professional medical intervention, this specific cycle of self-blame and neurobiological despair is nearly impossible to break alone. You cannot shame yourself out of a medical pathology.
I really hope you, the listener, hear that clearly. If you are in that loop, your inner critic is basically committing medical malpractice on you right now.
It is the absolute worst possible treatment plan.
So, how do we evaluate our own lives? The material provides a very practical clinical benchmark for you. It's called the 2-week rule. But what does that actually look like in practice?
So the 2-week rule is a standard diagnostic guideline. Look, everyone has terrible days. Everyone has moments of deep fatigue or a whole weekend where they just don't want to leave the house or a few days of feeling profoundly down. That is just the human experience.
Right, we all get sad or tired.
But if you notice the severe signs we've discussed, the inability to function on a basic survival level, the heavy, unyielding guilt, and especially the anhedonia, that total loss of joy in things you normally love.
Wait, let me stop you there. Does that mean 14 days of uninterrupted pitch black misery? What if I have one decent afternoon in the middle where I actually laugh at a joke? Does the clock restart?
No. It's not about 336 hours of continuous unbroken misery. It's about a pervasive, dominant shift in your baseline that lasts for 2 weeks or more. If the overwhelming majority of your days are defined by this void and it's severely impacting your ability to live your life, The clock does not restart just because of one fleeting moment of relief.
That's a really important distinction.
It is. If this is your dominant reality for over 2 weeks, it is time to definitively stop calling yourself lazy.
It's time to practice radical self-compassion. The call to action here is crystal clear. Depression is a medical condition. It requires professional treatment, whether that is therapy, medication, or a combination of both. It is not a moral failing.
Absolutely not.
Seeking help from a doctor is not a sign of weakness. Actually, when your brain is chemically screaming at you that you are worthless and you still somehow pick up the phone to make a doctor's appointment, that is the most courageous step a human being can take.
It takes immense, unquantifiable strength to fight back against your own corrupted operating system. Recognizing that the system is what's broken and not your character is the key to surviving it.
We have unpacked a massive amount of heavy material today, from the illusion of the steering wheel to the starter motor analogy and the terrible friction of the guilt loop. But I want to leave you with something to really chew on, something that flips this entire conversation on its head.
Let's hear it.
Throughout this deep dive, we've focused almost entirely on how to spot when things go wrong. But let's look at the inverse. If the absolute truest, most stark clinical dividing line between everyday laziness and a severe medical condition is our capacity to feel joy, perhaps we've been measuring a successful life completely wrong this whole time.
Well, that's a really interesting point.
Right. We live in a society that relentlessly demands we measure our days by our output. How many emails did you send? How clean is the kitchen? Did you crush your workout? How much did you hustle today? But if losing the biological ability to enjoy a simple slice of pizza or laugh at a dumb movie is the ultimate medical alarm bell, maybe the true metric of a healthy life isn't our output at all. It's our capacity to actually enjoy being alive. Exactly. Maybe the ultimate metric of a successful day is how fiercely we protect our ability to experience pleasure. Think about that. Instead of judging yourself for taking a nap or ordering takeout, what if you viewed that rest as an active, vital defense of your capacity for joy? I invite you to rethink your own metrics for what makes a good day. Are you just trying to endlessly get things done, or are you actually making sure you can still feel the sun on your face?